The stakes are high in a pivotal race in the U.S. Senate. Today, a conversation with Democrat Elissa Slotkin. And as we expected, the presidential candidates are swarming the state of Michigan. Today is Sunday, October 20th, 2024, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi there, welcome to Flashpoint. 16 days now before Election Day. Of course, the exact number of days doesn't quite matter as much because voting is already underway and the absentee ballot totals already cast in Michigan are pretty robust. If you'd like to not think about politics, say you've already cast your ballot, or you're wanting to not dwell on it too much before Election Day, well, good luck. For starters, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris seem to have taken up part-time residence in the mitten. Their running mates are spending plenty of time here, too. And it's hard to watch anything on TV right now without being swamped by political ads. I don't remember ever seeing so much TV time devoted to state legislative races. And so many of the ads, a staggering number, center on the race to replace outgoing U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow. It's a current member of Congress, Elissa Slotkin, against a former member of Congress, Mike Rogers. Last week, we saw the second and final debate between the two. The divides are sharp and pointed, and the race is, for lack of a better word, intense, not to mention extremely expensive. We're going to dig into that race these next 2 weeks on Flashpoint. Next week, Republican Mike Rogers will be here, and we'll start today with Elissa Slotkin. And our roundtable raring to go, too, all today on Flashpoint. Open seats in the United States Senate are pretty rare happenings, and the intensity of the campaigns is quite palpable. It was again the other night in the debate between Elissa Slotkin and Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers, as I mentioned, will be here with us next week. Today, we talk with Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. Congresswoman, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with the fact that I'm just curious about your own reflections on the fact that the two of you now have both, we're approaching $150 million being spent on this campaign for jobs that pay $174,000 a year. Does this make any sense?
No. I mean, I think we have the worst campaign finance system in the world. It's a Frankenstein of a system. No one would ever want it to be this way. And for me, this is a big reason why I have signed on to ban corporate PACs. I mean, the amount of money that is coming into this election, both through us, but also through outside groups, is really, no one likes it. But, you know, this is the system that you're in, and so people, you know, if you care about who controls the Senate, then you get in the game.
It's what you have in front of you. There's no doubt about that. I want us to spend some time talking about China, because I can't. Sure. China has had such a centrist role in this campaign. I want to start by playing an ad that is running against you right now, and I'm going to do the same thing with Mike Rogers next week.
You bet.
But I want you to get your response to this.
Sure.
Elissa Slotkin is lying to you.
What you drive is your call.
But Slotkin voted to let states ban gas-powered vehicles. And Slotkin helped funnel millions in taxpayer subsidies to foreign EV companies that then laid off thousands of Michigan workers, killing jobs.
What you drive is your call.
Don't believe a word she says. Elissa Slotkin is good for foreign EV companies, but she's bad for Michigan's workers. Senate Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
An ad that you've no doubt seen by now, but give me your take.
Sure. I mean, it's just, unfortunately, we live in a political system where people sort of lie with impunity. I did not vote to ban EV or ban gas-powered cars. I would never vote for that. I do not care what Michiganders drive. As I said in the ad, you know, they repeated my own ad. I don't drive an electric vehicle. I live on a dirt road, nowhere near a charging station. So for me, I don't care who builds them, but it's who makes them that I care about.
It is wrong to say that there is an EV mandate.
Yeah.
However, if you create standards, fuel efficiency standards that are so stringent that the only way that the automakers can meet them is by making EVs, electric vehicles, is that the same as a mandate?
Yeah, but the air quality standards that are now on the books, the car companies helped build those standards. Their representatives were there at the announcement. And a couple of years ago, that wasn't the case. A year and a half ago, the EPA started floating a new air quality standard. And immediately all the Michigan representatives said, wait a minute, can we meet this? Is this even possible? Called the car companies. They said, we were not even involved in that negotiation, and therefore we came out against those standards. But to me, if the car companies are in the room during the negotiation, then that's something they believe they can sign up to. And if they can't, they should come back to us and have that conversation.
What should our relationship be with China. We clearly need each other,
Yeah.
but with particular specificity regarding the Goshen plant. What should our relationship be with China?
Yeah, I mean, I think China is a military threat and an economic security threat. It's both. And for me, I mean, one of the things I feel strongly about is that China should not be able to buy farmland in the United States, manufacturing facilities in the United States, food processing plants in the United States, and I feel so strongly about it, I authored legislation that would allow us to ban them. I feel very passionately also about banning Chinese vehicles in the United States. They're just like driving collection officers. All they do is collect data and video. So for me, as a national security person, as a CIA officer and a Pentagon official, I spent my life protecting the country. China is an adversary. They're a threat. And so for me, we just make it so that they can't buy huge parts of our strategic infrastructure here in the United States.
To the Goshen plant, though, weren't you in favor of a partnership there?
So I found out about it in the press the way everybody else did. That wasn't a federally funded project. That was a state project. I can't control the past. All I can tell you is what I propose to do in the future. I can't write legislation that goes backwards. And going forward, any Chinese entity or Chinese company that's trying to buy farmland, manufacturing facilities, or infrastructure should go through a proper national security vetting before we even consider it. I
want to talk about immigration then. What we get from both sides, especially Democrats, for the last couple of years is we need common sense immigration. I want to know what that means.
Sure.
What does immigration look like to you?
Sure. So I think we can say, most of us, that our immigration system is broken. It's not working for anyone. And what's going on at the southern border is a result of that broken immigration system, and no one's proud of what's going on the southern border. For me, we need to key immigration to our economy. That means people need to be coming over here when we need them in things like farming, right? Talk to our farmers, are desperate, or for high-end stuff like robotics and engineering. Our businesses up in Mackinac can't function without visa holders from other countries. We need to raise the caps on all of those visas based on what our economy needs. If one year we need more in one category, it goes up. If it doesn't and we need to lower it, then we lower it for the next year. It's key to our economy, and then you make it faster, this is key, to applying from home than walking over our southern border, right? People are coming to our southern border because they just can't find another pathway in. They just want a good life for themselves. That doesn't work. Every country gets to know who's coming in.
And yet, while there was certainly illegal immigration going on while Donald Trump was president, it is much higher now. Is that not an onus on the current administration and the party that is affiliated with the White House?
But this, to me, is why we were actually having a productive conversation, negotiating on a bipartisan basis, Democrats and Republicans, what to do about the border. I mean, I think there's nothing that can be done just without an actual cooperative process, and we had that. We were working on that, and it would have stopped a lot of what we're dealing with right now at the southern border. But Donald Trump came in and said, I don't want you to solve this problem. Mr. Rogers came in and said, no deal. We don't want a deal. We want to talk about this right now on TV in political season. And they are. And, you know, I come from the Pentagon. If you identify a security threat at the Pentagon, but then say, let's wait a half a year before we actually deal with this problem, you'd be fired. So to me, just adults can get in a room. We can disagree, but adults can get in a room, hammer out a deal, and then come forward in a way that works for everyone in the immigration system and also doesn't leave our border so vulnerable.
I want to ask you about the presidential race.
Yep.
I'm very curious about your thoughts that Kamala Harris has become the standard bearer for the party without having won one single primary, without having received one vote. I mean, clearly she got the votes of the delegates who were at the convention. We all understand that. I suppose technically that's how our system works. But are you comfortable with how Kamala Harris rose to be the candidate for president?
Oh, sure. I mean, she's the sitting vice president, and the sitting president opted not to run. I mean, unusual event, right? What we call at the CIA a black swan event, kind of unpredictable, low probability, high impact event. So we all know it was a tumultuous change, but it doesn't surprise me at all that with Biden stepping aside, that his sitting vice president, who he chose, would be the proposed nominee. And to be honest, lots of people had the chance. They could have come out and said, you know what, me too, I want to run for this.
This is another reason why a lot of people feel uncomfortable with the way it happened. It felt like the fix was in, a backroom deal.
Oh, I don't. No, the sitting vice president. It would have been different if Joe Biden had picked some random person we had never heard of who was not in any elected position, that kind of thing. This is a sitting vice president, and I think most people understood that they have a close relationship. They have a close connection.
I want to talk about the one issue that I feel like no one is talking about very much in this campaign season is health care, with the exception of people are talking quite a bit. In fact, you and Mr. Rogers have both talked quite a bit about prescription drug prices. But the overall health care system, I find it really interesting that we had a robust conversation about this, it felt like in 2016. Maybe it was Bernie Sanders' presence in the race. Then we did have a fight over whether we were going to keep the Affordable Care Act and John McCain's famous vote. But I'm not sure anybody, what should American health care look like, given that right now we have a system where if you come down with a really devastating disease, you've spoken quite a bit about how your family knows all about this, you can go bankrupt. That's our health care system in America. Don't get sick.
Well, I think, look, I mean, you know, I got into this race in 2018 because of my experience with my mom, who was diagnosed with cancer when she didn't have insurance. And, you know, we're trying to get her tests and surgery the same month that we're filling out the paperwork for her to declare bankruptcy. Before Obamacare, number one reason why Americans filed for bankruptcy was medical debt, which is just broken. Which is just broken. So I believe everyone should have access to health care they can afford. And how we do that is just we're not settled as a nation. Everyone feels like they're paying too much. And by the way, the doctors, the nurses, they don't like the system either, right?
Hate it.
They can't
it's
stand
driving
the
many
system.
of them out of the business.
Not working for It's not working for anybody. For me, I always believe that it doesn't matter if you're in a full-time job and they offer insurance, or if you're going to go and be an entrepreneur. You should be able to buy an affordable plan that gives you good coverage. And the healthcare companies need to understand that they have to provide certain basics to people. They've stopped approving lots of procedures. But to me, you know, this is a difference between me and my opponent. He voted, I think, over 40 times against Obamacare and protecting people.
I got to get to a break. I was really hopeful I could get the two of you together on this program, but I know you both had agreed on the debates that you did. But thanks very much for being here.
You bet. Thanks.
We'll bring the roundtable in right after this. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. All right, let's bring in this morning's roundtable. Great to have with me Jason Rowe from Rowe Strategic. Caitlin Buss is here, Deputy Editorial Page Editor of the Detroit News. Mario Morrow back with us from Mario Morrow Associates, and Adolph Mongo is the host of the Detroit in Black and White podcast. And let me start with you, Adolph. We've watched this flood. The candidates, as I said, they're all going to start picking up their mail in Michigan. They're spending so much time here. But Donald Trump talking a lot about Detroit, was at the Detroit Economic Club back at Huntington Place, and there's been a lot of talk about his efforts to try to attract black voters. Is that working?
I have to give him credit. You know, he's the only person I know that can trash a place, say how bad it is and stuff, and then come back and ring your doorbell and say, invite me in for dinner. You know what? And here he is. He knows that this is an important state. He knows that Detroit is important. And this is the first time in a long time that the Republican Party are fighting and taking the fight to Democratic strongholds, not only in Detroit, but Milwaukee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and saying, if we can get 10, 15%, and if we get 20%, we got it.
Well, as a strategist, Jason, is this time well spent?
Absolutely. I mean, it's historic. I mean, I think in my lifetime, this is the first time you've seen Republicans nationally and down ballot actively going after black votes. And, you know, you have had for many decades Democrats taking black votes for granted and Republicans ignoring them because the cost of trying to get to 10% is pretty exponential when you've got other voters out there that are larger groups of voters that you can maybe get a little bit more benefit. But I think for black voters, this could end up being one of the most decisive elections determined by the black vote.
Mario, what are you seeing?
I agree with Jason as it relates to black votes being very, very important in this campaign. I just can't wait until this thing is over, number one. Number two, it is admirable for the Republicans to come into black, strong, Democratic strongholds. However, they're doing it, in my opinion, because the Democrats have done the same thing within the Republican strongholds. They seem to be making waves with white women, strongly across the board, and that is taken away from their power strength. This thing is so razor thin close. No one knows what's going to happen until the day after the election. If then.
That's optimistic, the day after. I don't want you to speak for all white women, but to Mario's point, Caitlin.
Yeah. No, I think it's fair. There might be a bit of an exchange going on there. This election's really interesting, and I think on the Republican side, what you have is a really unique coalition that's come together. And so, we don't know what will happen, but they're going after black voters, they're going after union voters, and they're making a lot of progress in kind of unconventional ways. And so we'll see if that coalition sticks together after this and if they can pull it out. But I think that's a fair exchange, maybe.
Adolph, do you have any sense of what's going to happen in Michigan? The polls show us it's been continually in the margin of error, no matter who's doing the poll.
Listen, this election reminds me of when I was a kid, and my father used to take me to old Cobo Hall with big-time wrestling, Bobo Brazil and the Sheik and Nick the Bruiser. And you never knew, a free-fall, they're jumping all over the place. And you never know it was already...
Those are already fixed.
But as a kid, really not a good analogy. As a kid... No, it wasn't. You didn't know it was fixed. You thought this was the real deal. You know what? The bottom line is, what's going to happen is who get the turnout.
Yeah.
And you're right. This is like an alternate universe where you got Republicans going after folks that they never even thought about, and then the Democrats going after Republicans, going after far white folks, right people that disenfranchised. They pissed at Trump, etc. So it's like a mixture of, it's like a bowl of stew.
So who's going to win?
Who's going to win? I think at this point, whoever get their base out right now, and that's who's going to win.
I love the professional wrestling metaphor. It's pretty good. But do you have a sense of what's happening? I mean, you're looking at the numbers as well as anybody.
If you look at the 7 battleground states and the Real Clear Politics average of all the polls, in all 7 of them, Trump has the lead. Now, his largest lead is 1 percentage point, and his smallest lead is 1/10 of 1 percentage point. So call it tied. But if you go back to 2020 and you go back to 16, he never had to lead any time in either of those elections. And so when you look at that, and look, we all know historically some Trump low propensity voters have been difficult to poll. I don't know if pollsters have corrected for that, and we're seeing
sure trying. I know that.
Trying.
Yeah.
But I do think right now he's in a much better position than he was in the previous 2 elections, and it seems to me that very incrementally momentum has been going his direction.
What do you think is going to decide it, Caitlin?
Well, one thing I find interesting is Michigan's tracking absentee returns right now, and we're at a lower rate than we were in 2020. And I think there might be a couple of factors, but that could be an indication that Republicans are going to vote on Election Day or closer to it, and that there's going to be more of it than this mail-in absentee addition that we've had to our voting system. I just thought that was an interesting indication of where things are right now.
I believe it was Nate Silver pointed out that the 2 most likely things to happen on the swing states, Mario, was that Donald Trump would win all of them, but the second most likely thing is that Kamala Harris wins all of them.
Right. So, there you go.
I'm a little baffled.
Well, I'm going to go on the limb here, and I'm going to say Harris by 3 in Michigan. I think the 18 to 34-year-olds are going to come out in strong force. I think they're going to come out in large numbers, and I think that surprisingly you'll see an uptick in African-American voters coming to the polls, and again, women,
what's
white
leading
women.
you to that?
Well, just from what I'm seeing on the ground in the grassroots community and talking to a lot of people all around the state.
You used to always talk about the barbershop.
The barbershops and hair salons, man. You know, they proved me wrong a couple times, though.
That's right.
And they might prove you wrong again because folks I'm talking to, they're not feeling it.
Well,
And the only
something
reason
has to explain. Caitlin's right. The absentee ballots are down compared to 4 years ago.
Right, they're not feeling it. I'm not saying that the vice president don't have a shot. I hope that she wins, but they're not feeling it. She has a man problem. And a black man problem, and nobody wants to talk about
Well, that's
that.
why you're going to bring in Barack Obama, you're going to bring in
he
Michelle
started
Obama, everybody else.
But the former president went about it the wrong way. You don't spank somebody's butt and say, "Oh, you got to go vote for this person." You got to, lay out
You
the
have to do like
groundwork.
Donald Trump and literally spank some butt, right?
The other wild card remains what Arab American voters are going to do as well, and that's
What
still
set it out?
maybe
And that's about
uncommitted, right?
Yeah.
I got to get to a break. Gang, thanks so much for the conversation. We'll wrap things up for Flashpoint right after this on Local 4. All right, fresh out of time for this morning, but again, a reminder coming up next Sunday morning on Flashpoint, a conversation with the Republican in that race to succeed Debbie Stabenow. Mike Rogers will be here. Have a great week. Meet the Press coming up next, and we'll see you next time right back here for Flashpoint.